All right, joining us now, he is the radio voice of the Utah Jazz, and he's kind enough to jump on with us each and every Thursday. He's the one and only David Locke. What's going on, David?
How much, guys? Getting ready for the draft, seeing how it's all going to play out, getting interesting, trying to dig into numbers, having fun.
Let's do a little finals talk real quick, and then happy to talk some draft. 3-0, how big of a surprise is this?
I'm really surprised Dallas didn't win last night without Kristaps playing. Like, I really thought when Kristaps didn't go, and kind of assuming he didn't go the next game, I always thought the series would be 2-2 going back to Boston. We're 2-1, they're 2-2, 1-1-1, right? Still, we're back to that, aren't we?
Yeah.
I'm really surprised. I thought Kristaps being out, Al Horford being primarily on the floor that much. I thought that was the script by which Dallas got back in the series.
If you were to learn a team-building lesson, either a to-do or something not to do from either one of these teams, what would stand out?
Have your number one rival get totally desperate and feel as though they have to make moves so that they add a player that means they have to release the player that's the perfect fit for your roster when they're your number one rival.
That is what happened.
I mean, it's crazy. There's no question to me that Drew Holiday is a better fit to Boston than Dame Lillard was to Milwaukee. And it wasn't a doubt at the time. Like, I seriously wonder if Milwaukee even thought through what happened there, like that was a possibility. Because I really think if that's a significant possibility, you have to make sure you don't make that trade.
I think that is something that is more thought about in NBA circles than people realize. The number of times I've been told, hey, you got to realize Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck aren't making the move for face value, that you've got to think 3 and 4 steps down the road all the time. And it doesn't seem like Milwaukee did that, because you're exactly right. There were 3 logical landing spots for Drew Holiday the second he got traded to Portland. And Boston having the assets after the Kristaps-Porzingis trade was pretty masterful.
Yeah, the Kristaps-Porzingis trade by Boston was pretty masterful, too. I mean, that's incredible, right? They got first-round picks with Kristaps-Porzingis in that deal.
And then replaced Marcus Smart with a better player in Drew Holiday.
Right. And I think the more important thing they did, and I've talked about this a lot with you guys, I think one we don't talk about is the scars. We all talk about the old Detroit Pistons and Chicago Bulls and everyone breaking through. We don't talk about the scars. They changed the composition of their roster enough. I have a feeling that group didn't want to hear from Marcus Smart again. I know that group didn't want to hear from Grant Williams again. And so they changed enough composition in that locker room so that they weren't left with the past animosity or experiences of the last losses, and they were able to move forward.
All right, David, I like to bring our guests in onto disagreements that Ben and I have. And I have a feeling you will side with Ben on this one, just a feeling, but I guess I don't know for sure. Rank the top 4 players in this series.
Drew Holiday.
Well, not currently playing. I'm talking about like how the best players in the series, not
next
how
season.
they're playing, not like most important, but best players.
You're doing a fantasy draft. You're starting next season. These 2 rosters are available.
Oh, okay. I'm taking Luka Doncic first. Taking Jason Tatum second. Probably taking Jaylen Brown third. And taking Kristaps-Porzingis fourth.
Well, no Kyrie. You come on the same side as Ben. I'd take Luka second, maybe third. Now here's the part where you call me crazy.
He was a brat last night, but he's still amazing.
But he doesn't play a whole side of the ball. Like, you know what I love about Jaylen Brown? Did you hear his comments in the last series where he totally took not making all NBA defense totally personally? He was like, that was my goal. I've gotten so much better on defense. You know, people aren't paying attention to that. And he was sharp about it. And I love that. He and Tatum both being willing to guard as well as they do is the difference in this series. Like, it is the reason they're winning.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas is still here, right?
Meaning,
Like Dallas is the last Western Conference team playing.
yeah, I got it. I don't think they're the best team in the West, though. Still,
Well,
I think Denver's better than they are. And Ben laughed at me for this, and maybe you will too. I think Minnesota's better than Dallas.
I think Luka broke Minnesota in game 1, and they never figured out what to do about it.
Minnesota had the worst game plan. They were terrible.
I agree. They actually had the perfect game plan in game 1, and Luka broke them, and then they should have stayed with it, but they didn't. They listened to the noise. Now Luka's still great. I'm taking Luka. He's got to get better defensively. I agree. But like, there is a chance here that Boston. Well, actually, there's not a chance. Like, it is what it is. You can put every caveat you might want on it, but the fact of the matter is, the Boston Celtics have one of the 5th best differentials in the history of the NBA in a given season, and they're going to have one of the 5 best runs of fewest games played to win an NBA title. So, in a given season, you can decide whether you think they're one of the greatest teams of all time or not. Probably not. But in a given season, they are as dominant as any team has ever been in any season, basically, or in the realm of the most singularly dominating teams in the history of the game, and that's the only season they could play in. So, I mean, Boston's just way better than everyone else. Like, Boston just beat Dallas in Dallas without the player. I think it's the 4th best player in the series.
Going back to, we can just go back 2 years because honestly, we can't go back 3 and 4 because that was the Warriors who won the title and then the Phoenix Suns who lost to the Bucks, and those teams don't reflect what they used to be at all. Who's more likely to get back to a finals out of the West? Luka Doncic and the Mavericks or Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets?
Both.
You think they both make it back?
Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm trying to think here for a second, but I would guess that they're 4 of the next 5 finals, and I don't know who the 5th is. Like, unless Victor gets there in the 5th year. There's something just... Minnesota's on pretty fragile ground. Like, Ant's great, but Minnesota's on fragile ground, and I feel like Oklahoma City might be a little more fragile than people want to say.
I would agree with that. They've got some moves left in them, though. Like, they've got some ammo, some dry powder. Right. My concern with Denver, David, let me run this past you, is I think they've got a Jamal Murray problem where I don't know how much longer he can play at this level. Certainly, he needs to stay healthy. There's no doubt about that. But I think Denver's going to have to swap him out for somebody else at some point during their run with Jokic. And that, I don't know, that's an iffy prop for me. I wouldn't
have gone there, but how old is he now? 29, 30?
Something like
off
that.
An ACL?
Mm-hmm.
With some reoccurring hamstring issues now?
And he's so important to what they do.
He's 27, but he's hurt a lot.
Yeah. And they're going to have to pay him $1 zillion, and I don't know if they want to do that either.
Yeah, I'm all right with him still. I think he's a real winner. I think he's pretty fabulous.
I like him too. I just don't know.
I think Denver will be the favorite next year. The question is whether Denver can ever get a bench. And then the question is whether the Phoenix, Milwaukee, Denver no bench approach actually is a problem.
And you're talking about scars. I mean, let's say Denver wins a title and then gets eliminated in the second round in back-to-back years, which of course is possible. We saw it happen this year. It's like, when do you just start – when does the owner just start saying, like, I hate having a $200 million salary cap bill and a $40 million, $60 million luxury tax? Like,
this is Denver's first scar because they had actually been on a very natural progression the whole time. They really haven't lost a playoff series that they should have won. So this is their first scar.
And I just don't know what to make of Kyrie Irving and his stability, and it's fun that it's lasted this long, but you get bit by snakes. And
right, but Luka is great. And so
he is great, yeah.
Luka will be able to they'll be great. They'll figure it out. And Luka's still, I think the one thing maybe we're forgetting on Luka is he's 2 or 3 years ahead of the timetable. Right? Most guys win their championships at 27, 28.
Yeah. He just turned 25.
Right. So he's 2 or 3 years ahead of where he's supposed to be right now. And he acted like it last night.
Let's talk draft. Where are you in your draft prep? It's less than 2 weeks away. We'll be wrapping up the second round a couple of hours from 2 weeks from now.
I'm kind of wrapping up my draft prep because honestly, next week I'm off with my daughter doing stuff, and I'm having Leaf Tulane do my podcast, which will be better than me because he knows the draft better than I do. So I'm kind of wrapping up, but still very like numbers based. I was up fairly late last night working on a project where I've tried to find out if there are certain statistical performance levels that put a prospect in the danger zone. So in other words, like if someone shoots poorly enough in whatever league they're in before the NBA, or their transition numbers are bad enough. I think transition shows athleticism as does isolation. If someone's catch and shoot, or, you know, I do think I have a threshold where if your catch and shoot and your spot up numbers are below that number, you're just not going to be a good shooter in the NBA. Like I don't have a case where someone has flipped that and become a good shooter in the NBA. Maybe Tyrese Maxey's the one, but I think his numbers in pick and roll were bad, and he's turned out to be a relatively okay pick and roll. He also has the best big in the world to play with, but for pick and roll. So, but I've done some interesting research over the last 2 or 3 years where I feel like I'm hitting it like 85% on if a player is under a certain threshold, you really should be really careful about drafting him.
Are there 5 players you like? Are there 2 players you like? Are there 10 players you like? Where are you on, I guess, and let's talk, the 10th pick for the Jazz. It gets so messy at 29 and 32. Not to rule it out.
So first thing is I think you have to be really honest about what like the picks around the 10th pick have been over the last few years. Like Zaire Williams in Memphis was a 9th or 10th pick, right? Mm-hmm. Like there've been a lot of, like if you go back and look, so like if Cody Williams and Ron Holland, to me, are both 10th picks of an NBA draft. That's exactly what everybody else has been getting on 10th picks. Good long bodies, each with flaws. Ron Holland says he can't shoot, which particularly makes me nervous because my data shows if you shot that badly in the year before you came to the NBA, you don't shoot well in the NBA. And Cody Williams to me recovers better with his feet defensively than Ron Holland does. So though Ron Holland's bigger and stronger, right? So you have your little things. So I think Cody Williams, Colorado, is really interesting. I thought you made a really good case about like there were just a lot of things that devalued his season last year that seem like they're getting more relevance, and there's a lot of stretches in the season that probably should be being paid more attention to. I like both. I love Reece Shepard. I don't think we'll see him, but I love him. But he's little. Like that's real. There seems like there's just a butt statement on every single one of these guys. Statistically, by the way, like this group didn't underperform past groups in their performance in the year before they came to the NBA, if that makes sense. Like there's just as many guys that are elite pick and roll players, elite shooters, elite, like all those kind of things. I think that's clear to me. Like, and so I think as you get into like 9, 10, 11, 12, you're into pretty good spots. I mean, I know some people love Stephen Castle. I'm super worried about his shooting. I like Devin Carter. I think he'll be able to play in the NBA. I like Jared McCain. I think he actually might be really good in the NBA. Though he makes me really nervous about the fact he's just been a year too old his whole life, right? So, like, he's not like a kid who got held back. He's like a February baby that got held back. Like, he literally has been a year and a half older than every player he's played his entire life. That's a pretty big red flag to me. So those are some guys I like, but everyone's got a butt statement.
All right, David, last thing for me. I know you've reacted to this, I'm sure, on your podcast, and I saw your reaction online, but we lost a friend, a family member, and Steve Clockie this week, and, Ben and I talked about it, and I thought our station has really handled it very appropriately, but I want to ask you about a specific, Steve, what I love about him is he's a radio guy, and everybody remembers his play-by-play, and he was great at it. But in the 90s, he was a great show host, and you worked with him during that point in his career. And I don't know if that got enough shine because that was so long ago now. But I'm curious to your thoughts on him, not only as a fellow play-by-play guy, but also as a radio host.
So I think he was on a show with Blackwell Booner and Klauke was kind of the main time we used him. We also used him as an update guy. He also, for many years, he floated around my show a good deal, so we did some fun things. Bam Bam, for those who remember it. So I think that sorry, I just saw the announcement on his services, which unfortunately I'm out of town for, so it's a bummer. So anyway, I think what he did is kind of to his personality is he understood who he was, right? So he didn't try to be a bombastic talk show host as that began to develop in that era. And he kind of knew that he could play off of David Blackwell and Ron Boone and get a laugh and a chuckle and do some things of that nature, in a way that would please the audience. And he would relate to the audience, and then he'd throw in his crazy little puns and his crazy stats and his crazy little notes along the way. And it just was kind of the perfect compliment to everyone. I mean, he really was a chameleon in that sense. I think he could have worked with just about anyone.
Well, David, thank you for coming on with us as always. We appreciate the insight.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon.
See you, buddy.
Thanks, David.
Bye.
That's our friend David Locke. Joins us on Thursdays, of course, radio voice of the Utah Jazz.